And welcome back to Comical Opinions. It's time for our weekly newsletter. It is Monday, March 5th, 2024. And in today's news article, which is a little bit more news than op ed, we're going to talk about Scout Comics, who's gotten themselves into a little bit of hot water in the past week, but it's really been going on a little bit longer than that. We'll talk about that in a second. Stay through to the end of the article, and we're going to talk about a reader poll that we put in our newsletter, which you might be interested in, and we'll talk about the reviews from last week and the reviews that are coming up for this week. So thanks for joining in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let us know how we're doing, and your attention is greatly appreciated. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform of choice, Apple, Spotify, whatever it happens to be, please leave a rating and score. Let us know how we're doing. Anything to help boost our algorithms up would be greatly appreciated. So let's get into it. So, what is going on with Scout Comics? Well, before we talk about what's going wrong, let's talk about what is going right. So, Scout Comics, if you're not familiar, is a small to mid-size, probably more on the small side, indie publisher. They're known for sort of eclectic titles that fall primarily in the fantasy, horror, sci-fi range. I think that's a fair statement. They do a lot of different things, but it pretty much is focused on those three. It's either going to be horror, Joseph Schmalke comes to mind, for example, or it's going to be fantasy, or just something in between. Maybe some, also a lot of titles with a sci-fi bent. So let's talk about some of the things that they're doing right coming out of 2023 and going into 2024. They've got a number of deals that are going on with streamers or multimedia type platforms for some of their titles, including West Moon Chronicle and The Grey Lock. We've reviewed West Moon Chronicle and like it a lot. It's a weird sort of urban fantasy tale about a son who's brought up with his father, but the father was a protector of the woods, where all these mystical sort of malevolent and not so malevolent beings are in play. But it's very much grounded in, it's a small town in Texas as an example. So good series. And we rated that series highly, so I'm glad it's getting picked up and potentially optioned for streaming and film. uh, on the consumer side of what Scout is doing, they've announced recently, I think it was back in the beginning of January, their Scout Select program, which allows you to basically create boxed, shipped to your house bundles, and mixing, matching of titles in any combination that you want. So it's very consumer focused and very much about giving the customer the option of picking and choosing the comics that they like, so that the box isn't just a prepackaged bundle that gives you some stuff that you like, but maybe not things that you don't. And so that kind of works out from a consumer point of view, which is also good. And also, they are still publishing. So if you look at January coming into, we're now ending up in February and coming into March, they've had a number of new number ones coming up, including titles like The Veil, Van Bach, Rogues, etc. Now, you may not have heard those titles. That's not at all an indication of whether or not they're good or bad or popular or not, but they are still publishing. So Scout doesn't appear to be like a DOA type of publisher or getting ready to file bankruptcy as far as we know, but you never know what the future holds. So let's talk about kind of why they got in hot water this past week. This started off with a tweet from creator Jared Luhan, and in it he basically said, I didn't get paid for the comics that I created and published through Scout. I haven't heard from anybody in over a year, or I should say I haven't been paid in over a year, and Scout's leadership or management or editorial has gone radio silent. I can't get anybody to respond. Nobody's paying me for the work that I did. And once he published that particular tweet, that started a snowball of other creators expressing similar experiences with what happened to Scout, which is not good. You never want to be in that position. So Scout came back with effectively an apology post that they published on Instagram and X and every place else where they have some sort of presence. And then basically in the post, what it said is, we dropped the ball. We weren't communicative enough as we should be. Creators should be getting paid for what they did. They should be hearing back from us in a timely manner. All the standard typical responses that you would expect in an apology post of that sort. And then on the back end, they're indicating, without getting into details, because what happens between a creator and the publisher is really sort of an internal communication that's not necessarily fit for public consumption. But at the very least, they're suggesting that they're working on the back end with creators who have not heard back and trying to make things right. Okay, so it's an apology. It's a standard apology. It doesn't necessarily excuse what happened, but at least it appears that they're trying to state that they're trying to make things right, moving in the right direction. So is Scout alone in this situation? No, no. There are other creator type organization, or I should say, creator focused type publishers and IP licensed publishers that have had, I would say, on the back end, I've received direct communication from creators that are expressing similar concerns, including Boom, that includes Dark Horse, that includes IDW, that includes even Dynamite, who is one of our favorites. So they're not alone in this situation. It just may have been that they maybe pushed the envelope a little bit too far. Not that there should be an envelope in the first place, but they might have pushed it too far about uh, going radio silent on creators when they're owed money. That's never the right situation. There are also external contributing factors to why publishers might be feeling pressure. I mean, they're kind of like living, I would say, living paycheck to paycheck, but it's a feast or famine type of scenario where they're only as able to pay out as much as they can bring in. And there are a lot of factors that are affecting whether or not they can bring in cash to be able to pay out their creators. You have, for example, shifts in the market when it comes to graphic novels and digital, of which Scout really isn't a player. Neither are several of the other creators like IDW, Dynamite, Boom, and Dark Horse, and etc. Lots of competition in that mid-range space. So if you're just trying to do comics that are in the genres of horror and fantasy and sci-fi, there are a lot of publishers that deal in those same genres, and there are a lot of independent creators that are also dealing in those genres. So where Marvel and DC still hold the vast amount of market share because they have very specific IPs that are internationally recognized. When you bring that back down to a level of what am I doing as far as do I have an IP that's recognizable in multiple countries? Probably not. So then you have to fight it out in the genre space, which is horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and drama, crime noir. There's a huge amount of competition in those genres. So you really need to do something that stands out. And so if you're struggling to find creators that really give you something that's magnificent, it's going to be a challenge. Lack of transparency and communication, unfortunately, is an industry-wide problem, particularly among editorial teams. And this goes all the way up to the big two. I hear story after story after story of creators that will submit a pitch or need an update on a project or whatever, and they get nothing back. Communication is a huge problem among the publishers. They just don't do it. That's bad. There is no excuse for that. It's just bad. That is bad practice. That is bad business acumen. Regardless of the industry, whenever you're in an industry, whatever it is, and you reach out to a business and they don't communicate clearly to the people that they're doing business with, that is always a problem. Always, always, always. It has nothing to do with comics. That's just unprofessionalism, and that's a bad problem. And is this a pattern? For what we're seeing for Scout, unfortunately, as some of the publishers I mentioned previously, unfortunately, yeah, and it's a growing pattern, and it's a pattern where that lag time between somebody asking for communication updates or somebody asking for the money that they're owed, and then getting a response, if they get any at all, that lag time is, from my perspective, and from what I'm getting from DMs and people sending me private emails giving me information, that lag is growing. That's not a good thing. That's absolutely not a good thing. So that's cause for concern. So Scout says they're sorry, but what does that really mean? I mean, they're saying we're going to do better. We've made mistakes. We're going to do better. That's fine. That's good. It's a step in the right direction and necessary to acknowledge the shortcoming. But what really counts is what happens after. How do they really follow up on that apology? Do they really make things better? Are they reaching out to people? Are they making sure people are getting paid? We'll see. And unfortunately, not that I want this for Scout because we like Scout, Scout could be the one of the next publishers that kind of runs into a financial barrier that they can't overcome. I'm not saying they're going bankrupt. I'm just saying if this could be a red flag for a more serious problem that's following. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll let you know what we find out. And so, what does Scout need to do next? Well, obviously, they need to increase their transparency. They need to be better at communicating with people they're doing business with. They need to also be better at communicating with the readers to the extent that it is appropriate in a professional relationship, and make sure that they can increase the possibility that changes are met favorably. Some of those changes may be bad. you can't do anything about bad changes. But when you have a bad change and you hide it, when it's eventually discovered, that makes that change worse. The change may not be as bad, but by finding out it by indirect means, or by something coming up on the back end through an indirect source, that's always worse. Never hide your problems, never hide your mistakes, because when they come to light, the fact that you hid them makes them worse. And so that's something that has to be dealt with. So, and we go into all the standard business ideas about making sure everybody's paid on time and fairly. That's a standard. Making sure that you're open with your communication and making sure that you're consistent about how you do business. This is all standard stuff. It's basically business 101, but unfortunately, Scout is kind of following into this pattern where either because of the people they have, or some of the external pressures that they're dealing with, they just haven't been able to overcome them. They're falling into some really bad, unfortunately destructive business habits, and hopefully it won't get to that point, but they've got some work to rebuild and reestablish a reputation, and I hope they do it. So what do you think about Scout Comics? Do you read their comics? Have you read our reviews of Scout Comics? Or are there other publishers that are falling into the same trap? If you want to send us some information and we want to be discreet or anonymous or private about it, DM me directly, send an email to us. We'll be happy to hear you out. And, if there's a follow up to the Scout story, we'll let you know. So we're going to pause right there and move on to the newsletter for the other items on deck. So we are making great headway into reasserting, or I should say, reestablishing our publishing process to make sure that we're delivering good reviews, both in written format and in video format. And that's starting. We kind of got it was a little clunky there, but it's starting to come together and it's starting to coalesce and starting to smooth out. So I think we're on track to really get something locked in here, which is going to be very effective. However, a question came up and I didn't know how to answer it when it was posed to me. I was like, well, let's think about this. And the question really is, we're doing written, we're doing video. Do you want it audio as well? Because we do this, you're hearing this if you're listening on your Apple, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, where you're listening to us as a podcast. So we do know how to do that. The question is, you also want us to do that for the reviews as well. And so we have a poll in our newsletter. If you're subscribed, you can add your vote to the poll. Subscription is free. Please subscribe. It would be appreciated. And then what you do is you say, yes, I want all these reviews in audio format. So when you publish them on YouTube or wherever else, publish them on the podcast stream. And we can do that. Or if you don't want to do that, and you just want to read them, or you want to watch them, but you don't want to listen to them, that's fine too. Or third option is if you want to listen to them, but if you want us to batch them together. So instead of having like all the individual reviews come out whenever they come out, do you want us to like group them together so you get maybe one review podcast per week, or one or two podcasts per week where we cover several different podcasts? That one takes a little bit more editing work, but we can do that too. Want to know your opinion, want to know what works best for you. So if you're a subscriber, add to the poll. If you're not, please subscribe. It's free, and then you can vote as well. Okay, so let's talk about the reviews from last week. We had to push 2 reviews because of some scheduling conflicts, but we'll make them up this week, and I'll get to that in a minute. Won't read all the reviews. They're there in the newsletter, but our pick of the week, not a big surprise, Conan the Barbarian, number 8. There were a lot of great reviews that we went through this week, a lot of great comics that are doing good stuff. Conan just kind of had that little bit of extra where Jim Zub he's just killing the character. He knows the character. He's showing his love for the character, and we appreciate that. And it's coming through loud and clear. And you're getting a great, solid, rock, feel it in your bones kind of Conan comic. So I would definitely recommend picking that up. Let's talk about what's coming up for next week. We have several indie titles and some more obscure titles, but they're coming through. I think we're getting better quality overall. So let's talk about that. We have A Debt to the Ceaseless Reaper, number 1. It's an indie submission. And we also have the Laser Brain Comics Halloween special. Obviously, it's not Halloween season, but we're catching up on it now. Also an indie submission. Savage Sword of Conan, number 1 from Titan. That's one of the ones we didn't get to last week, so we'll get to it this week. And the other one we didn't get to last week that we'll get to this week is Grim Fairy Tales Volume 2, number 81. Now let's talk about some of the newer comics that we have on the list. Tox number 5 from Blood Moon, Dead Detective number 3 from Black Box, Gunslinger Spawn number 29, King Spawn number 31, Void Rivals number 7, and Antarctica number 9, all from Image. Big Image week this week. We have Jennifer Blood Battle Diary number 4 from Dynamite, Torpedo Torpedo 1972 #1 from a Blaze. That's sort of a gangster 1970s gangster story that fits kind of right in with the Godfather theme or feel of gangster storytelling. ED #3 from Blood Moon. That's an homage to the Blob, basically. Dead by Daylight #4 from Titan. That's a prequel to the video game. Guma, The Beginning of Her #4. That's Ji Hyung Lee's indie created book that's now been uh, submitted to Titan, and they've accepted it. And The Devil Wears My Face #5 from Mad Cave. So that's our newsletter for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on your podcast player of choice, please leave a comment and a rating. Let us know how we're doing. And if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, especially because you want to give your vote into that poll about whether or not we should do this on audio for the reviews, please subscribe. It's free, and we'd love to have you along. This is Gabe Hernandez, your publisher in EIC for Comical Opinions, signing off, and you have a great day.